Hi, everyone. Welcome to the CHP podcast. My name is Ariana, and I am our director of coaching. I am co hosting basically with our other podcast host today, Anthony Durazio. Welcome, Anthony.
Thanks, Ariana. Yeah, that is me.
We have joined forces today to talk about pretty common topics, I would say, for our clients, and actually pretty common topics for new clients that we get. Which would be kind of return to training from injury or starting a new sport.
Yeah,
Kind of that
absolutely.
like middle space where either you were very fit, got injured, now you're like, what do I do? Or you're very fit and then starting a new sport and you're like, why do I feel so unfit? What do I do? So I feel like the best place to start would be, honestly, Anthony. I mean, you've got two recent relevant experiences. One being that you started going back to jujitsu and training Brazilian jiu-jitsu again, which has been going awesome up until at Brazilian jiu-jitsu, you got your arm ripped out. So you can start at whatever end of this experience that you would like. You can start at the beginning, you can start at the middle. Totally up to you, whatever you want to talk about first. But I feel like that would just be a great place to start since you've lived it. You've lived both.
I have lived both, unfortunately, in the last eight-ish months, I guess, nine-ish months. So I guess I'll start a little bit of background just so people know who I am. So in terms of CHP, I've been a coach for almost 12 years. It'll be 12 years in June. So very close to 12 years now. Worked with everybody. But in my time as an athlete, I use that term very, very loosely here because I don't consider myself a real athlete. I was always into bodybuilding back decades ago when I was in high school. I did a bunch of sports. I did like track, cross country. I think I played basketball for my freshman year. When I got to grad school for my PhD, got into grappling. Right, so it's right before I started grad school, I got into grappling like that previous year. This is circa 2005. Did some grappling, but was all like very informal for the most part. I had 3 months at a Gracie Jiu-Jitsu studio, but then I was moved up to Columbus. Kind of spent a year with a club that didn't really work, didn't really learn much. Then I ended up with a judo club that did a lot of groundwork, but it was very informal groundwork. It was just kind of like go roll. So I did that until 2012. And this is, if you're a grappler, this is like right around the time leg locks were becoming like less looked down upon, I guess is the best way to put it, becoming a much more part of the sort of meta in terms of how to play jiu-jitsu. And that was like when I was leaving because I had to finish my PhD and then money was tight, time was tight, and I kept following the sport until I finally managed to get back with 10th Planet Columbus, so I'll give a shout out to them this past very end of July, so basically the start of August 2025. So I was coming back as someone that hadn't trained. I think I'd rolled 4 times in the previous 13 years. And also as an athlete that had left at the time at the age of 30 and now was 43 when I came back. So that was obviously an adjustment. Luckily I've worked with enough clients through CHP. I've worked with enough clients sort of in the age bracket I currently find myself in. To understand like what, how to do this and try and be as smart as possible, right? Which is something that wouldn't have been 15, 20 years ago. So before I get into like how my approach, I'll sort of cut to the injury. So the injury happened 4 weeks ago as of today. We're recording on a Thursday, and it was exactly 4 weeks ago that this happened. And
I got your sad text.
There was a couple of people got the sad text. People I knew I cared about me. Ariana is one of them. Got the sad texty of me in the hospital. I was rolling with a partner, and if he happens to be listening to this, he did absolutely nothing wrong. He just happened to roll me, and just the way he rolled me and the way I happened to land, it was one of those perfect storms of everything going exactly wrong. And I landed and heard the crunch in my shoulder, which is the crunch you never want to hear because it's a gross sound. And you're like, oh, did my body make that? Because bodies aren't supposed to make that sound because that's the sound of stuff breaking. So I ended up, given what it sounded like, given how it like felt initially, um, it actually didn't end up being as bad as I feared it might be. So I ended up with a shoulder separation on my right side, so this side. It was only grade one though, so it was only the clavicle, while displaced, wasn't like completely out of alignment. It was about maybe like 30 or 40%. It was probably like 40% out of alignment. So it wasn't too bad, but it is still a long road to recovery. And it definitely has meant I had to change quite a lot of things. I definitely wasn't doing going to jujitsu Friday after it happened. Let's put it that way, or benching the next day, for example. So that's the sort of background of sort of what led to this discussion today between Ariana and myself. And so, I guess my first piece of advice, and the first thing I tried to do when I started back at jiu-jitsu, is approaching it with the idea of titration, right? And titrating yourself, especially if you're an older athlete. Older, I'll say over like 30, depending on how active you were maybe when you were younger, 30, 35. I mean, it seems weird to say 30, but like I'll say 35. I think, most people are pretty good at 35 if you've been active. But 35, 40 and up, I really feel like you have to titrate yourself into these new experiences to see how you're going to respond and see, where are you lacking and how is this, what system is the weak, potentially the weak link in the chain that's letting you down at whatever this new endeavor is. Because that's probably the system that's going to get injured if you push too hard too quickly. And so that's what I did with jiu-jitsu. I was very disciplined the first month or two. Part of this was schedule. August I didn't have too much going on the first half, but then I had school starting up, so I was teaching classes. A variety of places. I was pretty busy. So I could have gone more often than I did, but I was very disciplined to starting off 1 to 2 times a week, which sounds like if you're a jiu-jitsu player, especially if you're like competitive, you're like, that's nothing. Yes, I understand. I'm also 44. I also have other loves. Right? I'm not going to give up, my strength training. Bodybuilding is my first love. That's just not going away. So that's going to stay no matter what. And I was also, it sounds really weird to say this, running quite a bit at the time, at least for me. You runners out there can laugh, but I was running like probably a consistent, like maybe 2 to 4 times a week, which for me is very good. I think for most hybrid athletes, that's fairly stock typical of what I do with my athletes are sort of, most of them are in that range, depending on what their goals are. But obviously that sort of meant I was like training 3 things concurrently, right? Or 2 things concurrently, the strength training, the running, and then trying to bring in the jiu-jitsu. So it's trying to add a third sport that is sort of by definition, full body kind of, you're testing a lot of systems at once with jiu-jitsu. So I'll throw it to you. So my first, I guess, rule number 1 is titrate yourself in. I guess, what is your comments on that, if anything?
That's how I think of things too. I always try to obviously look at the training history of the athlete or myself, right? And try and determine, like you said, when you titrate yourself in to isolate which system is, like you said, the weakest link. I also try to focus on like which system is the most robust. So for you, obviously, I think that would be strength, right? Right. That would be strength training and strength muscles, things like that. And you were training running at the time as well. So your aerobic system wasn't necessarily the weak link either. But I find that especially with bodybuilding and powerlifting as strength sports, you have so much strength, but Brazilian jiu-jitsu and judo, they pull you into really extended, awkward positions that we don't really train in those sports specifically. Some people do train them. It's really smart. But you're like exposed to these really extended positions, very awkward angles. And it is almost impossible to kind of prepare your body for being in those positions without being in those positions. Having extra strength always helps. But I think the other downside for really strong people that I've seen anyway is that they try to rely so much on their strength that when they're in an overly extended position, they may try to muscle their way out of it in a way that their joints, tendons, ligaments can't actually tolerate. And that's when you see things like strains, injuries, pulls. So it's kind of like, all right, cool, this is your strength. what positions haven't you been training that you're about to be exposed to? And then can we kind of use what you're really good at and alter a bit of the work to prepare you better for jujitsu, or just let jujitsu do its own thing, let you train in those positions, but give yourself the time to adapt. Um, just depending on your goals and your availability and stuff like that. So to me, very similar approach. Taking stock of the athlete that I have, looking at what they're good at, and then just honestly just using a bit of guesswork, trying to figure out where they're going to be the most exposed in that new sport. And then, just trying to sort out with that athlete how they want to approach bridging that gap, because more sport practice will get them there. So it's just kind of, again, so determining next best steps with that athlete. But like you said, the necessary first step is figuring out what pieces you're using, what you're working with, and then titrating down what's missing. Or not even what's missing, but just kind of like what's
What's
lacking.
limiting, I think.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's something I see a lot with jujitsu, like at least with the gym I go to. A lot of people I've saw when we cross train with other gyms, I sort of see it a lot. Is that it's as a hybrid athlete, one of the things that, especially if you're a CHP hybrid athlete, one of the things we obviously have emphasized over our existence is the benefits of like zone 2 work,
Mm-hmm.
and sort of like the myriad of benefits. Not to say that that's the only thing you can you should or can do, but there are myriad of benefits that come with like very little sort of recovery cost to doing go out. As I tell my clients sometimes, like, hey, yeah, ideally I want you to go out for like a 45 minute to an hour and 15-minute run, somewhere in that range. But I would say, hey, like if you're short on time, you got something going on with the family, like get out for 20 minutes, right? That's, last night I had a class that went till 7 p.m. By the time I get my shoes on to go run, it's, I'm short on time. My dogs are barking up a storm. Apologies. But I had time for like 35-minute run, and it was like pretty easy, right? It's just a chill, easy day, run at the end of my day. And I felt great. Today I felt great. I can always tell when I'm doing enough, aerobic base, because I feel it in the gym. I don't get tired in the gym. And so one of the things I noticed with the jiu-jitsu athletes is I would see so many of them repeated rounds crush them.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, obviously, a lot of this has to do with like how hard are you going on each round. Like if you're going all out, it's like your grandmother's life is on the line here. Like yes, anyone would be shot after a 5-minute round, of course. But like people even that where you like, I'm going with them. We're kind of, I pace myself because I'm 44 and I ain't trying to win every match. I don't need to at my age or what my goals. But like I can, even if I get, up the tempo a little bit and get tired, like usually like that minute break between rounds, or that, 30 seconds where you're finding your next partner is enough. I'm like ready to do the next round. Mm-hmm. So I always like try to explain to other athletes that, at least for jiu-jitsu, I find there's like, you have sort of these two competing systems. I sort of think about I often phrase this like types of cardio to people that don't understand the systems, and sort of say you have sort of like your round to round cardio. Like how many rounds can you do in a row? Right. At like some 70, 80% of like max all out, competition level, maybe, 60 to 80%, somewhere in there, I guess. And then there's, okay, what's your intra round sort of capacity, right? How hard can you go within your 5 or 6-minute round? Right, those are two different things, right? They're stressing two different systems. The former is stressing like how quickly can you recover in the 30 seconds to 1 minute between rounds, right? And that's going to be your sort of aerobic base, aerobic capacity is really going to affect that. Whereas sort of your more low anaerobic, high aerobic base is really going to affect your intra round capacity, and you train those differently, right? And so that goes to I guess what my second sort of thing I would consider both as a coach and as an athlete, right? So obviously trying to take both approaches for our audience here. So number one, titrate, if whether it's for yourself and you're the athlete here, or if you're a coach, titrating someone into something new, to see where they're lacking. The second thing I would say is really figuring out what is this person's short and long-term goals here, right? And this is something that I was, with jiu-jitsu, we'll start with there and I'll talk about the injury. With jiu-jitsu, I was very clear that I was like, okay, I just like watching it. I like the movement of it. I find it, beautiful. Just like like, yeah, submissions are cool, and it's always, fun to hit a submission on somebody. But just like the movement to get into the submission and how, like, get the finishing mechanics, it's more like it's the process of doing that I find really cool, right? Like, yeah, do I like, because most of, like, let's be honest, most of the people you like end up rolling with or doing jujitsu with are your friends, right? So you don't really, I don't think you should really want to be like breaking your friends. Like, that's not. If your goal is to go in and break people, you're not going to last at many gyms because you're going to get kicked out, or no one's going to want to roll with you. My favorite roles are the people that I'm like best friends with, because it's like we can flow roll, and like that's the way I like to roll. Again, I'm old and slow. That's the way what I enjoy about it. And for me, it was like, hey, it's another way to add, some additional movement to my life. It's another way to add, some fun. Like, I don't have a lot of fun. I hate to say I don't have a lot of fun in my life, but I don't. Something that I actually enjoy, like weight training, I enjoy, but like, let's be honest, like there's a lot of workouts, when you've been doing training for close to 30 years now, like there are workouts where it's like, you're putting in the work, right? And there's nothing wrong with that, but it's not like you don't come home, like finish going, man, that was the greatest day of my life, right? It goes greatest hour or 70 minutes or 45 minutes of my life. No, it was like, all right, I put in the work I needed to today. And that was fine. Whereas jiu-jitsu, like there's times where it's like, that was genuinely fun, right? That was a genuinely fun role. And so I've gone in with the sort of goal of like, hey, let's have some fun. Let's learn some cool new stuff. Let's like get our body moving in slightly different ways than like the sort of like, like straight planes of movement, like I do in the gym, which again isn't wrong, but to Ariana's point, like, you get like stuck in a twister. You're all twisted up and like, you get put in more, I'll say, I hate the word athletic because like, what does that mean? Right, but let's just call it, for sake of brevity, more athletic positions. And the other thing I found, I sound like such a jiu-jitsu nerd, is community. Right, I realized when I was there, I didn't have like an in-person community. That people talk about third spaces and how third spaces have gone away, and I think this is something that I didn't realize was missing from my life. Obviously I have like people that I'm friends with, but a lot of them are online friends. Like Ariana and I are many, many states away from each other. Like, I'm sure if we lived close, we probably, her, myself, and the rest of the CHP crew would all hang out a lot more together. But we're not close.
No.
Unfortunately. So that means like, yeah, you're friends and like you can be good friends online, but it's different than like having going and like seeing people in person and like physical contact, right? Like that is like a need. I don't say a need, I think is strong, but it is when it's met, it can often fulfill something that was missing. I'll phrase it that way. That you didn't realize was missing. So I think with any client or person, trying to get them to articulate as best as possible, like, hey, what are your goals here? Right? Hey, you want to do a triathlon? That's awesome. Really cool. Like, Ariana was talking about this sort of offline within the CHP community. As a coach, you want to validate someone's interest, or you don't want to invalidate their interest in something, because you like selfishly you want to keep them as a client, probably, but also just as a person and sort of as someone that is presumably you care about your client, you want to like support them and like what the new endeavors they're trying, the curiosity that they're showing. Hey, I want to try a triathlon, man. I really want to do an Ironman. Hey, Joe, that's great. Oh, that sounds really cool. Like, why do you want to do a triathlon, and why an Ironman? Right? Those are just inquisitive questions to try and get at potentially the root of like why they're doing it. And then you can go, hey, like, right now we're running 3 miles. We're going to do a couple like 3 miles. Couple 3 mile runs. There's I think the mail has arrived. Both pit bulls are going nuts. They're very protective. No one's breaking into the house. So that, you get to, hey, you're only running 2, 3 or 4 mile runs a week, which is great. But maybe we should start with like a sprint triathlon, right, or something on the shorter side to see if you like it, or let's try it out. Let's set that as our first goal. See if you like it, and then go from there. Maybe then like an Ironman is potentially like a year or two away, potentially, if we like it. Or it's like, hey, I really like biking, and you find out that the client's biking with their friends on the weekend. And really what they want is that sense of community. Great, cool. How can we work that in? And how can we like, maybe we're just make that, hey, long, easy ride. And those are directions. Hey, go on a long, easy ride with your buddies, right? Your friends. And there's that, like a lot of cases where people are like that, like as a coach, I want to encourage that, and like have minimal requirements or like goals to be met from my end, because the point, like, yes, there's 2 points that, like, objectives they're trying to do. Like, obviously there's the sort of cardiovascular conditioning or like whatever fitness goal like we have, but there's also the community goal that is probably equally, if not more so important as to why they're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And sort of getting them, to not interfere with that goal, which is potentially like the thing that's keeping them doing it. Maybe that's the thing that's keeping them engaged on the bike. Right. Cool. Like, I have two options here. I could like shut down and say, hey, you need to hit this like interval workout where you're putting out 600 watts every 30 seconds. Right. And that's miserable. That's absolutely miserable. And they're probably not going to, no one's going to want to do that. Let's be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But like, only the most hardcore person is going to want really, cyclists is really want to do that. Hi, Trevor.
He still does group rides though.
I know, but right. And that's the thing. Like, how can we keep someone like interested in this? How can we support the other goals that are being met by this activity?
Yeah.
Right. I think as a coach, it's always easy to fall into the, just like as a teacher, right? As I tell my students, like all of us teachers expect our class to be the most important thing in your life.
Yeah, it's right? The only one you're taking.
Yeah, it's the only thing you're doing in your entire life. Nothing else. You don't have to work a part-time job. You don't have relationship issues. You don't have social issues. You don't have like, you're missing your family because you're first time away from home issues. Like you don't have other classes. No, it's just my class and that's it.
Yeah.
Same thing as a coach, right? Like, we've talked about it in the podcast many times before, where as a coach, your job is to make the training work for the client within the confines that their life built around that training, right? Or the walls and sort of constraints that their life puts around that training, right? And sometimes that means like, hey, like, yeah, this is maybe not the quote unquote ideal training session from a fitness perspective, but from a like social wellness, emotional wellness, physical wellness, like triumvirate, we're sort of on a local maxima across those three dimensions.
Yeah.
Right. And we're thinking across those three dimensions, like, yeah, we're at a maximum. If we maximize just physical wellness, we're at that local minima for the other two instead of on the 3-dimensional space. We're in this sort of pocket of crap. And the client ends up not doing the work. And then you're like, well, why didn't you do it? I was like, oh, because I wasn't any fun to do 600 watt intervals. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I guess, do you have thoughts there?
No, yeah, I like that because I don't know if this is your experience, but I think it is. I feel like a lot of our clients at CHP are very high performers, and a lot of hybrid athletes like self-select for extremely focused, one would say almost hyper-focused on sport outcome or sport progression. And this is really positive. This is what makes them really successful. But I think at the same time, it can become, if you're not careful, it can make you myopic. It can make you miss a lot of other things that would add to your success in that sport. And I think like over focusing on individual performance and not actually integrating with the sport. So not going out and doing local group rides or meeting other cyclists, or if you're a runner, like never doing group runs, never doing local 5Ks, never meeting other runners, and just kind of existing in your bubble. Twofold, you don't have access to the community. You don't have access to support. You don't have access to accountability except for your coach, or if you're self-coaching yourself. That's kind of lonely. And then, second, I think what a lot of people miss when they start a new sport is that everybody struggled just as hard as they did. And there's hundreds of other people out there working just as hard as you and having just as hard of a time. And I think the class environment is a really great place for that. When you're in jiu-jitsu and you are, white belt new, and you're rolling with only experienced belts, experienced BJJ participants, you can get in the headset of like, I suck. This is not a normal experience. I just suck at this. And that's really defeating. And it requires a lot more external validation to get through that. Whereas I feel like when you're in a class environment with other new people, and you roll with them and they roll with you and you watch them roll with other people and you're like, wow, we all really suck. Like, or like if you go do a 5K with someone, or you do a 5K as a group, just a local one, you're not doing it to win. You're not doing it to place. You're doing it so you can run alongside other people of a similar fitness level and recognize and see how red their faces are and see how hard they're working. And that this is an endeavor for lots of people, and lots of people are at the same place you are in their running journey. And there's so much to that because it pulls you out of your head. It gets your head out of your ass occasionally. And it helps you gain some perspective on what a normal process is in gaining competency in your new sport. Because there's that expectation that it should go as easily as your primary sport or a previous sport. Like Alex has a lot like the white belt mentality, and we talk a lot about the white belt mentality. But like, let's be honest, if you're a high performer, if you are a type 1 person or athlete where, if it's not an A grade or if you didn't complete the workout with an 80% compliance, like it makes you stressed. But white belt mentality is a great thing to say, but if you're not around other white belts, you don't understand what that even means. Really, you don't have the context needed to like actually assimilate yourself into the sport easily. Some of us can do it ourselves, but it takes a ton of intrinsic motivation. It takes a ton of focus. Because I see so many athletes, like I call it the file cabinet mentality, where it's like training goes in this folder, nutrition goes in this folder, family goes in this folder, and like everything is just segmented. And when it's training time and it's time to talk about training, your client will pull out only the training folder. And you're like, okay, but like, what other goals do you have? What other stuff do you want to do with your life? Because that's just one folder out of 10 or one folder out of 20. What's going on with the other folders? And they'll look at you like you're crazy sometimes. They'll be like, what?
Yeah, no, so it's interesting you bring that up because I find, my wife will admit to this, that I compartmentalize like that a lot.
Yep.
Although I recognize like things bleed into each other, I just feel like I can compartmentalize quite well if need be, and oftentimes do. Just who knows why, right? Is it probably like a self-defense mechanism? Like, hey, so-and-so person that I cared deeply about died. Okay, well, I got to go train now, right? And that's in this bucket that can deal with that emotional weight and baggage later. Right now it's training time. And like, yeah, probably to some extent. I will, I don't know if pushback's the right word, but I will say, I think it's important to note that if you're someone that like likes to run alone, I run alone. I run with no music. I've run 27 miles with no music, literally nothing, by myself. And it's, again, I think it's part of like, what are you doing the sport for? Or like whatever you're doing, activity for, right? I like the solitude of that. Like I like being alone with my thoughts. I like sort of pushing myself without sort of like, thinking about my stride. Sometimes it's thinking about life. Sometimes it's like clearing my head, right? But to me, that's an important part of running to me. Right now, that's not to say like when I go home and I get to see my brother when he's in town, we meet up at my parents' house, oftentimes we'll go for a run. Like, it doesn't matter if I haven't run in a couple months. Like we always, like the last couple of years, we've always gone for a run together, right? Like at Thanksgiving, we go to, because that's usually when we see each other nowadays in person. We always go for a run, like Thanksgiving morning. And we just chit chat like on the run. So like he's kind enough to slow down to my speed for me, which is very nice of him. But it's and I love it. And like if we live closer, would we probably like try and get together for maybe the occasional like once a month run together? Probably, absolutely. But for me, like part of it's like, hey, when I run, sometimes it's kind of like spur of the minute, like I think I might run tonight, and then 2 hours later, like all right, we're going for a run. Mm-hmm. Like I'm not planning it as well as maybe I should as a coach. But it's also, again, I enjoy the idea of like running on my own. And so that I just want to point that out, but part of it's, let me go back. Part of it is also to sort of the competency issue, which I think is something that you were touched on, and I'll just highlight just to phrase it differently for the audience, is sort of the ability to see others be as incompetent as you. It's a good way to put it. I think, having done running as like a team track and cross country in high school and middle school. I've got that background where I know, I know I can get back to running really quickly if whenever I want. My body just naturally is like, oh, like I'm not fast. I want to be very clear, I'm not fast, but I can get back into it pretty quickly and know what's sort of happening with my stride and know what's happening with my breathing. And so and my goals aren't. I'm not trying to become, sub 25K again. Like I've done that in my life. I was 17 or whatever, and I was also a lot lighter. That's not the part of the life I'm in right now. I'm doing it to for long term general health. Because it makes me feel better in the gym, right? Like I don't want to die when I'm 47, right? Like things like that. So yeah, I just want to push back a little bit, but if you enjoy doing something alone and that solitude gives you something, I don't think you have to feel like automatically you need to I need to go join a group ride. No, you don't have to.
Yeah. No, I mean, same. Good call on that too. Cause I love running in the mountains alone. And I think it's really funny because when I was my fittest and I was the best runner, it's because I had a lot of time and I lived close to a lot of mountains and I would just kind of leave my house, pick a mountain and go run up and down it. Because for me, going for a run on the road is torture. It's torture. Not even, let's not talk about treadmills. I can't do it. I need visual distraction. I need to be in that tunnel vision of trying to stay on the single track. I need to have something to focus on, which is don't trip, don't die, don't trip, don't die. You know what I mean? I need that in order to run. And you can give me all the interval workouts you want. I'm going to hate every second. I'm going to cut it short and I'm going to go home. And yeah, I have running goals for sure, but none of them are 5K time. I don't care about my marathon time. You will never catch me in a road race. I'm not doing it. No, no. But there's also a lot of difficulty to running with a partner on a trail or a mountain because everyone paces them differently. So your pace is not really ever going to match up with another person unless one of you is actively slowing down for the other or actively speeding up for the other. So it is a very solitary endeavor. But I think again, you and I having so much experience either with the sport or just in general, now I can wrap my head around it. But when I started, I was like, oh my God, I'm so slow. I'm so out of shape. I ran up that hill and I threw up. And I remember one time Alex was like, lots of people run up hills and throw up. It's really hard. And I just remember that hitting me here I was just assuming that I was bad at this. And granted, I wasn't very fit at the time. That's why I threw up. But it just didn't occur to me that the solution would just be to do it more. And then once I made that decision, once I made that distinction, I was like, oh, cool, I can keep doing this. And I'll just put less pressure on myself. I'll walk uphill instead or whatever it is. But yeah, no, you're never going to catch me running on the road. You're never going to catch me doing races. Absolutely not. No, again, the reason I do it is kind of like you do. It's my mental floss. It's when I go work out all the junk in my head and look at flowers and birds and bugs.
Yeah, no, I'm similar where so I'm literally sitting next to a treadmill and when we were picking this out so we'd have something to walk on here at home, I specifically told my wife, we need to get one where it can go fast enough where we can run on. So not just a walking pad. And, we bought it over a year ago and I've run on it exactly 0 times.
Yeah.
But I told myself, well, if I have to, I could.
I'd rather run in the rain.
Say that again?
I'd rather run in the rain.
Rain doesn't bother me too much. If it's pouring, I obviously don't want to be out with it's lightning and where I'm worried about my safety. But a light rain is really nice, I find. But yeah, I'm lucky enough. I'm similar where I'm lucky enough to live by a bike path. I mean, you've seen the map, you know where I'm at. It goes by a river. It goes by if you're in Columbus, Olentangy River, Olentangy Bike Trail. You know what I'm talking about. And so it is very nice that I have I'm close enough to have fairly easy access to it. And I can run, and that's there's parts of that trail that really just no, it's got trees everywhere. You're next to a highway in some parts, but it's not much. I like it because it's to me it's very relaxing. I'm similar. I want to see birds. I want to see trees. Right. It's like the cross country part. Like, yeah, if I have to do intervals, and you put me on a track, sure, I could do them on a track. But that's not. If I get my druthers, I'm like on hard pack, around like a lake or something, or on a trail.
Hmm.
That's a lot more fun, and yeah, it's just more relaxing to me.
Hmm. Yeah, it's like I tried the whole like traditional running training route, and I burnt out like really fast. Like for me, it was just alternating between zone two and then some tempo work on a trail, and then some hill work randomly, super unstructured. Um, I got so much fitter and so much faster than I've ever been. My mile time got fast for me um, when I was doing 0 mile training. Like I just won't do it. So yes, knowing why you're doing it is important so that you don't fall into the trap of like, well, everyone else trains this way, therefore I must. And then you fall out
Right.
of love with it because you forgot like what it was that attracted you to that modality or that sport in the first place.
Yeah, and I'll say just I want to add this just if someone that's like running a jujitsu gym happens to be listening to our podcast, my heart goes out to you because I think anyone that deals with like a group class structure, I think this becomes as a coach, this becomes a really potentially difficult thing to manage, right? Because you have so many people there. And they just think I'm going to use jiu-jitsu as the example here, just because that's what I've been dealing with recently, and I think it's really obvious there, where you can have people in there that the motivations, the capacities, the abilities are all over the map, right? You have some people that are there simply, they're 22 years old, they're purple belts or brown belts, whatever, and they're there to compete, right? They're there to eat everyone's lunch, take their lunch money, and compete. Right? That's not to say they're not nice, that they can't roll, well with everybody, but their goal is to compete and be the best. They want to be ADCC, champions. Great, right? Then you have people like me that I'm the older. I'm like the oldest guy that's like consistently there when I'm healthy. My wife's been going, right, so she's older than me. Our goals aren't the same, right? My wife is like very new. She like doesn't pick things up as quickly. She doesn't come from an athletic background, so it takes her longer to like learn the movements because she doesn't have like a previous athletic background to like fall back on, and she's 45. Uh, but so just like she's got, dealing with her is going to be a lot different than dealing with the purple belt that's been in the game for 7 years and is 22 years old. And as a coach, it's how you balance that, how you sort of try and meet everyone's expectations and goals, I think is a difficult challenge, like in an in-person setting. It's obviously very doable. I think our coach does a great job of it, but it is a difficult challenge, like how you structure things. So I want to transition over to the injury and still keep it on the idea of goals. Because I think one of the things I've always done with my injuries, I've had thankfully nothing too serious over my lifetime, but I've had enough things that have put me out for like, a couple of weeks, a month or two. And I think this is I always try to look for silver linings, right? Because what else, what's the other, your other option is to not, I guess. And that sucks. And so I always try to go, okay, how can I use this to my advantage? Right. So when I injure my shoulder, it's like, okay, I injure my shoulder. Like there's nothing, you can't go back in time. You can't like not injure your shoulder. It's injured. The recovery is the recovery. Like, yes, this is not to say that there weren't moments where I was like super annoyed by it having happened, and like just angry is maybe the wrong word, but like just like super annoyed, right? Like just very, very annoyed that it happened. But it's like, okay, what can I do? Right? How can I transition my goals for the short term? Right? Maybe my long-term goals are still the same. Short-term goals, obviously, I can't be like, oh, I was really trying to do a heavy bench cycle, microcycle for the next 4 weeks. Well, that's obviously out the window, right? Or whatever, upper body work was pretty much out the window. So it's like, okay, like I guess I have no excuse to not train legs, right? 3 times a week, right? Can they be the heaviest things? No. Like, do they need to be the heaviest things at 44 years old? Also, no. Right? Nope. Calves, like my calves. I've been training my calves like so much the last 4 weeks. And lo and behold, would you know it? They actually look better. Look at this shocking revelation, right?
Whoa.
You actually train the muscle group and it responds. This is, come to complete human performance, more hard hitting news
You better
in the
write that
training
down.
space. Yeah. Make sure you take notes on that one. Right, but it's it's like understand like, hey, this is what it's going to be, right, for the period of time, right. My goal is to like do my rehab, be consistent with that. Don't miss days, right? Like, yeah, are you probably going to occasionally miss a day? Yes, I think I missed like 3 days of rehab work in the last 4 weeks, but it's not bad. Like I was doing rehab the day after it happened. Um, so I think always trying to find ways to reframe goals or like tweak goals in the short term, like if you're dealing with an injury, while sort of like prioritizing rehab for the
Hmm.
injury, for whatever can be done for the injury. I think is the way I typically approach injuries. And this can be challenging, right? Because sometimes it does mean putting down, skipping races,
Hmm.
depending on what the injury is, what happens. And it's always a difficult conversation as a coach with your clients or athletes. They'll say, hey, like, I know we spent the last 6 months getting ready for this major, Ironman triathlon, and you tore your meniscus walking down the stairs,
Hmm.
right? Like
Happens
that, like
so, not so often, but like it happens. It happens often enough that it's heartbreaking every time. Um, but
yeah, and
it's
it
like,
sucks. And I think to something that came up earlier in our conversation is sort of, I think as an athlete and as a coach to some extent, trying to keep your athletes focused on this. You know, yes, the race is a goal and it is an event, but it's not. It doesn't erase the however many months of training you did, right?
yeah,
Whether it goes poorly or it goes unpoorly, it goes well, unpoorly, it goes well or poorly. In some ways, like doesn't matter, right? Like I know it's hard. Like I don't really want to like compete in jujitsu, but I'm like, okay, why don't I want to compete? Well, I don't want to lose. Well, okay, like no one cares, right? Like, literally, no one cares. My coach doesn't care. My wife's not going to love me less, right? Ariana's not going to fire me if I go lose my white belt match. Like no one cares, right? Right. So but it's still hard to get over that. Like, oh, I was training so hard. It's like that doesn't take away from like everything you learned or everything, like all the great runs you had if you're a runner, or all the good sessions you had in the gym. Like if you're a weightlifter or a bodybuilder or whatever, those are all the things that take up way more time than the actual event.
yeah.
The actual event I find is oftentimes, this is my personal, it's oftentimes a letdown, right?
People
Not
get
in the
to
sense that you,
lose. Yeah.
yeah, like I mean, not and again, not in the sense that you like win or lose, more in the sense like I think for at least for certain things, like you might expect it to feel more like marathon is kind of like the best example I give for this. Is I feel like I don't know, like I think people expect something magical to happen. Like if you go 26 miles, like you finish and like something orgasmic occurs, like when you finish, and it's like
Yeah.
what, you just feel tired, and the last step felt like the same step you took in mile 15 and the mile 12 and the mile 9.
Yeah.
It's the same, functionally it's the exact same thing, like nothing changed. um you just went farther, that's it.
Hmm.
Okay,
Hmm.
right. So I remember when I went 27, like I was just like, I think Art, you remember me talking about this. I was like just like disappointed. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, all I did was waste my day. That's all. This is what this is accomplished. Like I was like the most downtrodden I think anyone's ever been about going that far by themselves. It's like I was just annoyed. It's like,
Yeah.
well, this was a waste of a day, right? Um, so I just think like as a coach or athlete, remembering when you have an injury, like, hey, it doesn't take away the work you put in, right? They yes, like I heard people say, like especially in jiu-jitsu, like injuries are like fundamentally your fault, and I'm like, I don't think I completely agree with that. I think there's a lot you can do to mitigate the risk, right? You can be smart with your training. You can understand, like, hey, I shouldn't. The most I've run in the last like 8 months is 1 mile. I shouldn't go out and try and run 22 today, right? Like, yeah, you're probably going to injure yourself, or injure your client if you're telling your client to do that, right? But if you addressed your issues, your weaknesses as well as you can, or the client's weaknesses as well as you can, you focused on them. Sometimes things just happen,
Yeah. That's
right?
why there's
Like,
accidents. Like,
yeah, things just happen, and like I remember when with my shoulder, I watched like the security video. Like my coach pulled the security video just to make sure like nothing silly happened. No one was being an idiot. And like the security video, it looks like absolutely nothing. Like it
hmm.
looks like I just get rolled, and like then I'm laying there on the ground, like what happened? Like if you just watched it, you would never think I got injured.
Yeah.
It's just like everything just went perfectly wrong.
Yeah.
You're running on a trail and you miss a route, right?
Hmm.
It's like you successfully navigated how many thousands of routes over the last however like 5 years were you uninjured. You missed one.
It
You
was like when
twisted
I
your
was
ankle.
mountain biking and I just took a tiny tumble, but I managed to find the only giant rock with my ass cheek. There was no other rocks on that trail. None. Zero. I didn't even bite. I didn't trip on the rock. Like the rock is not why I fell, but I just managed to find it with my ass cheek. Um,
It's like a
and I
homing
actually,
beacon.
yeah, and I actually put makeup on the bruise because it was so bad that when I ran my first high rocks, I was scared that they would like tell me I couldn't run it because it was like a hematoma.
Guys, hold on, I need to powder my ass cheek.
Yeah. I don't want you to notice that I am grievously wounded.
It's all fine. Don't look over here.
Don't mind that one side of me is far more swollen than the other. It's normal. um, yeah, no, things just happen, and there's like nothing. Like looking back on it, like if I was a better mountain biker, sure, I probably could have avoided falling there. But like, I'm pretty sure that rock sought me out. I didn't do that. Lethal homing beacon. Um, yeah, I feel like it's just such a injury is such a weird headspace because I feel like humans were wired to give more attention to negative feedback. Like we're just wired for it. We're wired to look for scary things. We're wired to look for negative feedback and remember it because we don't want to get eaten by the saber-toothed tiger. But now it's like, we were training to do X event that we signed up for on the internet. Like it's we're so far from that scenario socially and like in our surroundings, but like really not too far evolutionarily from that time wise. So it's often really hard to pull athletes or yourself out of that like hyper fixation on the Grok hurt ankle, now Grok dead. Now Grok cannot feed family. Like it's just this feeling of like everything's wrong, everything's ruined, I'm the worst person, like everyone's gonna leave me, no one will ever be proud of me. And oh, Grok family must leave him behind to die. Like but I feel like that's the mindset, and it's so hard to like pull yourself out of it and kind of recognize that you're allowed to grieve. You're
Yep.
allowed to grieve the lost opportunity. You're allowed to grieve not being able to do the event. You're allowed to grieve the missed training time. But like, short of becoming quadriplegic, like you can probably sign up for something else in the future once you're healed and you have all of this experience now that you've built up training for the thing the first time, and you can build upon that. So the question becomes, how do you maintain as much as possible while you're dealing with and healing from this injury or this illness? And it forces you to get a lot more pragmatic and start focusing on solutions. But you kind of have to really let yourself acknowledge that your brain your brain wants to get flushed down that toilet. Like your brain is like, I don't know, your brain thought you were the alpha wolf and now it's like freaking out because the pack's going to leave you behind and no one's going to look at your Instagram posts of you limping around the gym, like
Yes.
I don't know, like
Yes.
super negative.
Yeah. And then you realize that the alpha wolf's a myth and it's just your family, and your family's never going to leave you behind. And it's all okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you watch Predator Badlands? But yeah, I think it's really important for the athlete and the coach to like allow them to be sad, because I think rushing yourself through that process means that you're going to have that grief midway through recovery. You're just going to have it later, at an awkward time. But like once you're through that, once you allow yourself to feel that, if you still really care about that goal, then just put it back on the calendar, just further away. Like you're, God willing, you're going to be alive by then, right? Like just keep working. Time's gonna pass anyway. Sign up for something else. It'll be your first triathlon instead of your second one. Like,
Yeah. I would also say it's important, I think, as both an athlete and a coach, to take the little victories, right? I say this knowing Ariana mentioned this, and again, another internal thing recently. It's like, as a coach, you want to give your client victories, like give
mm-hmm,
them, to the positive feedback that Ariana just mentioned. Give people, we like wins. Like we might focus more on the losses, but we all like wins, right? And sometimes those wins are, especially coming back from an injury, those wins can be small, right? Like, hey, I was able to lift the grocery bag with like a minimal pain in my shoulder today, kind of thing,
mm-hmm.
right? Which is true. you know, um, if you're starting a new sport, right, take the little win. Like, hey, yeah, I couldn't do the entire move my coach just showed, but I was able to like get the first part of it down.
Mm-hmm.
My wife in particular, that's something we'll focus on. Like, if she can't do the entire move, we'll say, hey, like, hon, let's just work on the first part of the move. Let's get that down. That's a win, right? And so sometimes you have to break things down maybe more than you'd like, right?
Yeah.
Maybe the win is smaller than you'd like, right? And especially with the injuries, I mean, I don't think this is bad, right? But I think there's like what the doctor will tell you the sort of recovery time is for an injury. And then I think in your head, especially people listening to this podcast, CHP clients, the sort of high achievers that we've been talking about, we all go, we're going to beat that. 6 weeks, I'll do it in 4. Right? I think that's like we all do that. And then, like, you make progress, and as you go, I think week 1 happens, like, yeah, it's shoulders a lot better. I'll use myself as an example. Shoulders a lot better after week 1. I can start to like move it around. Like, I'm getting my range of motion back. I can lift a few things. Week 2, hey, range of motion is way better now. Like, I'm only getting pain at the very end of range of motion. Like, I can lift a little bit more in the gym. Didn't feel too bad. Week 3, same. Week 4. And like week 4, you start to go, okay, like, yeah, it's better, but like the amount of progress isn't as obvious. Like, it's not as
Mm-hmm.
far. And you start to go, man, really, I think it really is going to be 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh.
Oh, shit, it's really good. But like at the same time, like if in week 1, if I would have told myself it's going to be 6 weeks, it's easier to check out and be like, oh my God, it's so long. It's going to take me forever. Whereas if I go, hey, I think I can do it in 4, right? Or like be a little bit ahead of that, at least be like mostly back by 4, doing some stuff by 4. But that keeps me motivated, keeps me engaged in like hitting all those other smaller goals that you change, right? Because you're injured, you had to tweak them. Like, hey, hit my rehab. Hey, let's really work legs. Hey, let's slowly titrate in the pressing exercises that I know are what's going to bother it the most.
Mm-hmm.
So I think like if you find yourself like, oh, I overestimated my recovery ability. If you're doing all the things that you want, I think for that reason, it's probably okay that you did it, right? Like, because you probably pushed yourself appropriately. You weren't an idiot about it. So you did all the stuff you could to get yourself back as quickly as possible. You're still probably getting work in. Like, it's like, yeah, can I go bench press right now, like as much as I could prior to the injury? God, no. Right? The thought of that makes my shoulder want to explode. But could I, like, am I starting to get to a point where now I can actually like get like a contraction in my chest, like actually move enough weight for enough reps where I'm like, hey, I feel like my chest has actually got a stimulus there, right? Might not be the stimulus I wanted, or like, might take a little longer or be a little harder to get, but I'm getting to a point now where I can get a stimulus,
Yeah.
right? So I think don't beat yourself up if you're like, oh man, I said 6 weeks and it's going to be 6 weeks or 6.5 or 5.5, right? Like, the doctor is a doctor for a reason, especially if they're well tenured and well respected and have a good reputation. They know what they're talking about, right? That's not to say don't try to beat their, approximation or estimate on recovery dates, because I do think that sort of trying to beat it, as long as you're not an idiot, can be useful to keeping yourself engaged.
You're trying to be the best recovery person ever, rather than trying to be the same athlete you were. So it's still a good goal mindset for someone who's kind of type A or like high focused. Like, I'm glad that you brought up the titration word again, because I was just thinking about how well that ties back into this. Is like recovering from an injury. One of the first things you want to do, obviously, that like X things are out, but what's in? Like, what's in? What can you still do? What's still possible? Because if you're only focusing on what you can't do and you're not willing to experiment and try and find or not even focusing on going into the gym and like experimenting and figuring out what can you do. Okay, so maybe you can't load your shoulder or do back loaded exercises to train your legs. Is there a belt squat attachment? Can you rig one? Like, what are your options? And how can you maximize that time? But like you said, kind of just titrating in week over week. What's possible for me? What's possible for me? What's safely possible for me? Um, you'll find yourself already angling back toward the previous goals that you had.
Yeah.
Like the trajectory is already matched back up, um, rather than looking at everything as like, well, if I can't do X, then I may as well not do anything.
Yeah, I think I'll throw something else out there. It's slightly different. I'm sort of thinking about what you can do, especially what you can do. This is a good time, I think, if you're injured, to think about what I like to call the broccoli workouts. And what I
Yeah.
mean by the broccoli workouts are all the workouts that you tell yourself you're going to do that you never end up doing, right? Like, oh man, I keep getting these shin splints. I really should train my tibialis. You never train your tibialis, right? Unless your name is Alec Blennis, no one trains their tibialis. Like, right, like, and that's fine. But like, all right, it's like if you're really limited by what you can do, like if let's say your shoulder's really shot, you really can't like do any upper body, and like you really can't even like lay on it. So like a leg press that you can do like seated leg curls, seated leg extensions. Okay, great, do those. Like, and there's ways to like, do drop sets, do expanding cluster sets, right? Like
You can make
do
those
mile rep
brutal.
sets.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can do like there's lots of ways to make them, very, tiring and really give yourself a burn,
Yeah.
get a really nice stimulus. But right, it's like, okay, that's only going to take you so long. Like doing all those things that like to make it as miserable as possible. It's like, okay, like, all right, we're 20 minutes in, and that's all I can do for like hamstrings and quads. Right, so right, maybe you do more calf work. Maybe you do like you're someone that like doesn't do a lot of abdominal work or core work, and
Mhm.
you're sort of limited on what you can train, but there's some core work you can do. Cool, do that. Right,
Yeah.
like I
PhD,
find it as
GHR, like strap in.
yeah, I think sometimes it's a good chance to like be like, hey, like what are these like broccoli workouts that I because I'm so limited on what I can do towards my main objectives right now, are there like things that I know I should be doing, or I can start building up the habits of doing them,
Mhm.
right? They just become part of the routine. Kind of work on those now, right?
Yeah.
And that's just another option. I'm not saying you have to do that, but that's another option I sometimes think about for myself. Like with my calves, like, oh, hey, I got not much. There's not a whole lot I can do with the shoulder, because I can't do backloaded, couldn't do backloaded stuff
Yeah.
for up until about now. So yeah, other thoughts, Ariana?
Hmm.
I think those are my main ones.
No,
Right?
those are good.
I'd say titration. Really thinking about goal setting. Looking for the little wins. Right,
Mhm.
once you either are coming back from injury or starting a new sport, and like reevaluating those goals as you're both coming back from the injury, because those are going to change like week to week as you're able to do more and more, and
Mhm.
as you get into a sport. So like initially you might be like, hey, this look cool, I want to try it out, and
Yeah.
then you might go, man, I'm really loving this, I want to do the most extreme version of it, or you might go, man, actually this is kind of sucks way more than I thought. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
I actually don't like this that much, right?
Which
Or you
happens.
notice that there are limitations to what you can do. Um,
Mhm.
I know for me with jujitsu, like the biggest change that I've noticed as I've gotten, between now and when I was in my 20s and doing some grappling, is that just the impact. Like I can't take impacts like I used to. When I was younger, like, yo, you knock me over. If I land on my forearm or something,
Like
that's fine.
bounce.
Yeah, it's like it's all whatever. Now I land on my forearm, and like my forearm's like all out of whack for like a month and a half.
Yeah.
Um, so I just have to, does that change my game a little bit? Does that like change how I ask to roll with people, or change who I choose to roll with? Yeah, it does. Right. Because it's like there's some people I know they're natural, like they're going to go more competition intensity. And it's like, I have to worry about my own health and safety. Right. And so I think that's something to keep in mind. Whatever sport you do, you might notice like, hey, per Ariana's talk about like the values of doing things in groups and classes, like, yeah, those are certainly there. But I think also think about, hey, I'm someone that's easily swayed by the group. And like, if I go at like the 8 a.m. spin class, those guys are those, men and women.
Monsters.
are monsters, and I'm going to like
Monsters.
try and keep up with them, and I'm going to injure myself. Okay,
Yeah,
maybe go to the 9 a.m., which is maybe a little easier. You get the moms
totally.
and dads, the parents coming in there after they drop their kids off at school or whatever. They're a little, maybe a slightly older crowd, like whatever. I don't know.
Yeah.
But just knowing how to sort of handle what limitations you have, right?
And
And whether
support
it's,
those instead of punishing yourself for having them.
yeah,
The other thing I would add to your point about finding the little wins is like proactively planning them in. Because I think when you have a short injury, like 4 weeks, 6 weeks, it feels like forever. But 4 weeks and 6 weeks, like, I mean, it's like the second week of April already, and I thought it was February. So like time does fly. um, but like for extended recovery, or like in my case where dealing with a chronic illness, if I get into a flare, sometimes I'm in it for months, 6 months, 8 months. That's when things can really start to drag. And that's when it can become really negative and you kind of lose track of the short term goals that you had set for yourself. Even if you've obtained them, you're just running out. So to me, like what I've learned for myself is I will like proactively build in training sessions that I can really do well in. And they may not be necessarily challenging. It could just be like, I want to have a really good squat session today because I've been just super bummed about my squat total going down. So I'll just go like 70%. I'll do some banded squats. I'll do some box jump, maybe supersets with it, like go full French contrast. Like I'll just have fun with it again. And just totally depart from what I had been doing and build in something fun or build in a win or like I'll do for athletes that have something holding them back, right, from running as far as they'd like or running as quickly as they would like, or maybe they're stuck in like a run walk. I'll send them on glimmer runs. I'll send them on run walks to coffee shops and then, to walk home with a pastry. Um, like, I'll be like, hey, when you're on your run walk on the trail, I want you to take pictures of 3 flowers and 1 plant. Or like, find a cute animal. Did you see any cute dogs? Like, just something that gets your head out of that I'm performing so much worse than I was, or thinking about all the things you can't do. It kind of keeps you focused on, and especially if you already know what your value system is and what you're doing it for and what you're training for, it keeps you focused on like why you care in the first place. Like you and I, we both like to run because it makes us feel better and we get to see things and we get to bring that aerobic capacity into every other piece of our lives. So like, yeah, maybe we can't run right now, or maybe we can't run quickly right now, but still put yourself outside, go see green things, go look at stuff. Um, I think there's just so much value to, some would call it treating yourself with kid gloves. But I would call it acknowledging your own humanity and your need for something to fill your cup. Like you need something to fill your cup. Um, and if training was that for you and you've lost it, you should probably also diversify, but not all of us can do that. So, it's plan in something that's going to make you feel good at the end of it on purpose. Even if there's no training value, even if your Garmin says unproductive at the end, turn it off. Um, there's so much more to whatever your training endeavor is than just the training outcome. Whether you're fixating on that right now or not, there is so much more to it than that. That's why you're so obsessed with it. I think just kind of honoring that and honoring your need to kind of have a win occasionally, even if you have to completely repackage and reframe. It keeps you sane or
for
moderately
sure.
sane,
Yeah,
using
for
myself
sure.
as an example.
Yeah, I agree with all that.
But yeah, beyond that, super helpful. Thank you, Anthony.
Thank you for having me on.
Of course. And guys, if you are dealing with an injury or don't know where to start with a new sport, or just any of the stuff that we talked about, if any of it kind of resonated, um, there's a lot of ways to speak to our coaches, not only Anthony and myself, but we have coaches that focus on specific sports. specific mindsets, you can always email us at info@hybrid-academy.com and let me know your situation, and I can put you in touch with one of our coaches that I think best fits what you need and what you're looking for. You can get a consultation with them, which is incredibly detailed. You get 60 minutes with that coach, but you also get to send them stuff in advance. And it's a really useful way to maximize your discussion time with that coach. But you can also, if you're interested in coaching or templates, you could talk to me. I'm the one that runs the Instagram and the info at email. I'm happy to chat with you and hopefully point you in a direction that can help you. Um, I've done this a couple of times. People tag us on Instagram and then ask me a few questions. That's straight up led to me doing, consults and straight up fixing things that were crashing for people. So please don't think that, if you don't work with us now, or you don't have a template from us, or if you just have a template, please don't think you can't also contact us. Please ask about these things. Even if you're not in a position to work with us right now, if we can have a few words, if we can give you 5 minutes of our time and reset your entire trajectory, we're going to do that. So please take advantage of that. Reach out to us if you ever feel like you need some encouragement or someone to yell at you in all caps on Instagram and tell you you're doing a good job, because I love doing that. I made a joke actually with the guy that messaged me. He was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry for bothering you. I didn't want to bother you about the template or something like that." And I was like, "My brother in Christ, like, people buy templates from us and then never check in. It's like my child leaving with their lunchbox and then never coming back." Like, are
Did
you
it
okay?
work? Are you doing all right?
Are you okay? Like, I really
Did you do
actually
that
want to
triathlon?
know. Are you doing okay out there? Please let me know. So yes, please consider reaching out if you have any questions. We do actually want to hear from you. Like,
And I will also say, like, if I could throw something in here, is just, especially on the template side. Like, obviously, if you have questions, feel free to reach out. We're happy to help. That's why we're here. Like, I always tell my students this. Like, I think all of us in life look for validation to what we do, and like, I think many of us that are coaches do it. I mean, obviously, we have to put roofs over our heads and stuff like that. But we there's ways to do that that aren't coaching, or teaching. In my case, I do both. No, we do it because we like to help people,
yeah.
right? And so, like, if we've written a template and it helped you, and you're just out there in the ether, it's like, oh,
Yeah.
we don't know. Like,
Yeah.
you like let us know. Like, if nothing else, know that you letting us know will put a smile on our faces. Like, oh, I'm glad.
I'll
Like,
carry
something
that with me
I did.
for weeks.
Yeah, like, oh, like if I got an email saying like, hey, that power building template that you and Ariana wrote, which was written by Ariana and myself, like really helped me. Like I really was able to add a little bit of size and like keep my cardiovascular capacity. Like Ariana will like cherish that comment for so long. I'll tell my wife like I got a compliment like on the template we wrote together, right? So some people, and it doesn't even have to be us. Like choose someone once a week that has influenced you in a positive way. Like send me an email, quick note. Hey, was just this thing about you, college professor, so and so, middle school, instructor, coworker, whatever.
Yeah.
Just thought about you, like the impact, positive impact you had on my life. And I just say I really appreciated what you did for me, or like the
Yeah.
impact you had on my life. Like that
The
would make
world
that
could
person's
use a
week.
lot, use a lot more of that. Yeah. The world could use a lot more helpers, and it could use a lot more validated helpers.
Absolutely.
Yeah, cool. Thank you for that add on, because yeah, I agree. I will literally uh even if it's not a compliment for me, like even if they're like, yeah, like Mike helped me so much in the group training, I'll still be jazzed about that for like 2 whole quarters. So like please, reach out if you have any questions, concerns, and then obviously also if you have any feedback for us, or for a coach that you've been helped by, I will pass it along to them if you don't know how to reach them. All right. Thank you, Anthony.
Thanks, Ariana.
Okay, bye.
Bye.